Kia has been on a bit of a roll of late, don't you think? It's been producing some very cool looking cars that back up those looks with some clever technology and some nicely made interiors. Now, the Sportage has always been at the core of Kia's lineup, and these days it's got an awful lot of rivals to go up against. So can Kia transfer some of those newfound skills into the ever popular Sportage? Well, we're going to drive the brand new version to find out today. This latest generation of Sportage looks, well, to me, like the best yet. It's got the latest interpretation of Kia's Tiger nose grille up front, and it's framed by some very angular headlights and daytime running lights, which give it a great appearance on the road, both day and night. Around the back, it's the same sort of story. It's all tied together with a very cohesive design which both turns heads, but also looks quite premium. Now, it's worth mentioning off the bat that this car is a high-spec GT line version, which means that it gets all the bells and whistles. We've got heated and ventilated seats, we've got a heated steering wheel, and I've got loads of those fixtures and fittings that you'd expect from a high-spec car. But the fundamentals in here are very good, so the material quality overall is excellent, with nice finished steering wheel, some nice plastics and materials at the side, and then of course we've got gloss black plastic in the middle, which, as you might know, I'm not a huge fan of. It does all feel nicely put together and very solid in its approach too. Down here, there's also a nice little section which allows you to flip between the radio functions and the ventilation functions. Now, it looks really cool, and actually it works very well. But I do wonder whether at speed or travelling on the motorway, whether that's going to prove to be a little bit more confusing than it would be just to have separate dials. But having said that, it cleans it up, and it means the overall effect that you get is one of a rather streamlined and well thought out cabin. The rear seats of the Sportage are kitted out with a load of features that are going to make those long family journeys a little bit easier, I think. So for instance, we've got charging ports at the side of the seats here, and we've also got these holders in the back of the seat rests which have a rubberized material inside, and I reckon you could probably fit an iPad there, so you can sit there watching a film while having it charging at the side. Some other practical features include these hooks on the back of the seats, which are good for carrier bags, and these large pockets and deep section here for keeping those loose items from rolling around. But the fundamentals are good too. I've got plenty of knee room and leg room in general, and headroom is excellent despite this car having a panoramic sunroof, which sometimes eats into your overall space. You also notice that the Sportage has some ease-defined ISOFIX points on the outermost seats too. I'd say it's very impressive. You can see that Kia has just thought about the type of use that the back of the Sportage is going to be put to. The Sportage offers up quite a generous amount of boot space actually for a car of this size. There's 562 litres of storage space available here, and that's actually more than the 522 litres you're getting something like a Mazda CX-5. It's also nicely square, and as you can see, there's no lip whatsoever, so getting heavier items in is going to be an absolute breeze. I think it's a very usable and practical space, and most importantly, it's very easy to access. The only thing I would note on this particular one is this gloss plastic is going to be a little bit susceptible to scratches, so it might be worth finding yourself a cover or getting a towel and putting it over the front to avoid any damage. This particular Sportage has a 1.6 litre turbocharged petrol engine with a 48 volt mild hybrid system that aims to boost fuel economy and lower emissions. Now, with 148 brake horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque on tap, you should see 0 to 60 in just under 10 seconds, which is not sprightly by anyone's book, and it's certainly not sprightly in my book, but I'd say it's around about the right level of performance that you'd want from a car of this size and weight. Now, one thing that I've always liked in the Sportage is the steering, and it's the same case in this new one. It's really nicely weighted, and it feels accurate, and it feels well connected to the front wheels. And that means you get none of this kind of floppiness or this sense of disconnection that you get with a lot of SUVs in this segment. And the byproduct of that is, well, it feels quite nice to drive. It feels quite nice to corner. It stays relatively flat and level too. And as I mentioned, it's no supercar performance that you're getting from this engine, but it feels more than brisk enough, and you tie that all together and it makes the Sportage into, well, quite a good car to drive reasonably briskly. This GT line specification car is riding on bigger wheels, which does mean that the ride is a little bit fidgety at low speed, but I think that would be dialed out by fitting a smaller wheel and a bigger tyre, as I find myself saying about most cars these days. We've got a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which shifts really nicely. It's quite intelligent, and you can take operation of it via the paddles, but I just don't tend to bother in cars of this type. You just leave it to get on with the job. And Kia say that you should be able to get around 40 mpg, though combined we've been seeing just over 20, so I say we're a little way off those figures just yet. And this is a car with 2,000 miles on it, so it should be more than run in and up to speed at this point. I still think that a diesel is a good fit for the Sportage, but if you're doing shorter journeys, then this petrol version might be a better choice. It certainly makes it slightly cheaper overall. I've got reasonably good visibility in this car too. The wing mirrors are nice and large, and the front pillars aren't too thick, so my forward view is relatively uncluttered. Out the back, the rear screen is quite narrow, and the pillars either side of it are very thick, so over the shoulder checks are a little bit obstructed by those larger pillars. It'd be nice if it had a much bigger rear screen, but it's just something to get along with, and that's part of the problem with this slightly quirkier level of styling, is that it does start impeding on overall visibility somewhat. As you can see, when you're going through these bends and this slightly undulating section of the road, you're getting a little bit of head toss coming through because of the slightly firmer setup and those larger wheels. But it feels composed, and again, it's that steering that comes through so nicely for me. I really like how much weight it has to it. It doesn't feel stupidly over heavy, and it's not like in some models where you switch a car into sport and manufacturers seem to think that just adding tons of artificial weight to a car makes it sporty. It's not like that. It feels far more genuine actually, and it means that when you're cornering or when you're activating the lane keep assist, as you can hear, the car feels planted and it feels quite sure-footed underneath. You can use any other motoring cliche for how it handles, but basically the level of the steering that you get in this car just feels slightly above average in terms of its responsiveness and its feel too. One thing I will say is that if you hurry this 1.6 litre engine along, it does start to feel a little bit gravelly, but actually if you just drive it in a more caring fashion, so we say, it's relatively muted. I'm getting a short amount of delay from the throttle too when you kick down, so there you go, you apply the throttle and you're getting your boost, but not all that immediately. It's no different to many of the Sportage's rivals though in that sense. The Sportage feels like a continuation of Kia's winning run. It's great to look at, it's great inside, and it has a really good range of engines too. All focused on efficiency and usable day-to-day performance, which makes this a really good all-rounder in general. Add that into a 7-year warranty, which means that you really aren't going to have to worry about anything mechanically for those first few years of ownership. And you can see why the Sportage continues to be one of the best SUVs of its type on sale today. Thank you for watching this Motors.co.uk new car review on the Kia Sportage. Now let us know in the comments section below whether you would pick this Kia, or would you go for some of its key rivals? And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors.co.uk YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new review.